Hello and welcome to episode 16 of The Content Show. Who would have thought we'd make it? Well, we're back in the studio, back at the Click to View office, which we've converted into a studio. DJI, start recording. Start recording. Start recording. There we go. Now we've got a second shot so you can see how we've converted our office in this phase 2, when most of us can't come into the office, into a studio. So the idea is that this is kind of a halfway house between filming at home and filming in your office, which might not be as accessible for the next year. Certainly we can't fit all the staff in here according to the safe working requirements, and nor do we need to. Today we're talking about thought leadership. Now there's a new report out called the Thought Leadership 2020, which has been put together by Edelman and LinkedIn. I think it's in its third year. And a really interesting finding from this report is that there is a huge gap between the demand for thought leadership. The consumption is high, the interest is high. Thought leadership is changing decision makers' opinions about organisations, even getting to the point where they're willing to pay a premium based on your thought leadership. But there's a big problem. There's a huge quality gap. Something like 89% of decision makers believe that good thought leadership enhances perceptions of an organisation and therefore increases their likelihood that they're going to buy from you. However, only 15% of the decision makers surveyed in this report say that they would rate most thought leadership as very good or excellent, which identifies a huge problem for most people creating thought leadership. The quality perception is obviously not there, even though the demand for great thought leadership is clearly there and influencing buying decisions. So what makes great thought leadership? Well, here are some best practices. To quote a former editorial content director at Click to View, the first thing is have some thoughts. At the end of the day, thought leaders have to be known for something. What's your thing? Be helpful. Your thought leadership is only as good as what your readers or viewers get out of it. Be consistent. We've talked about this on the Content Show before. It's very important. Be consistent and be in it for the long haul. Develop an audience building strategy. Thought leadership is all about sharing your expertise, but if you're sharing to no one, then what's the point? You need to work out how you're going to build an audience, what channels they're going to be on, how you're going to reach them in the most effective way for you and for your audience. The personal media brand is the new thing, as we've also talked about on the Content Show. Some personal media brands are starting to eclipse traditional media brands. It's good for your company and it's good for your career to grow your personal media brand. Also this week, we're talking about advertising and the pandemic. Now, our latest blog goes into this in some depth. We've discovered this problem in terms of amplifying content for clients. Even the slightest reference to COVID-19, such as social distancing or drawing a dotted line with a 1 metre mark in an animation above it, can fall foul of the very strict advertising rules that Google and Facebook have put in place. For good reason, because there are an enormous amount of scammers out there and misinformation that's going around. But at the same time, it can stop justifiable communication strategies between a brand and its audience being told, such as work from home tips, for instance. Coming up, the Brains Trust and I are going to discuss both these issues and share our branded content picks of the week. Please subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you want to see more of the Content Show. Hit the like button because the algorithm loves it. Read our blog, sign up to our newsletter if you would like to hear more weekly news and views and how-tos, for instance. Dare I say it, thought leadership. Okay, and welcome back to the Content Show. I'm here with David Austin, our editorial content director, and Arturek Metsianov, our scripted content director and Singapore's most famous Russian comedian. We're not going to talk to you about gently sloping ramps and expensive slippery shoes. We're going to talk to you about thought leadership, funnily enough. Yeah. Off the back of what I've just been talking about in terms of there's this gap between the perceived value of thought leadership, which like 89% of people perceive high value from thought leadership, yet only 15% of people in this recent survey by Edelman and LinkedIn perceived the quality aspect as
as good or extremely good in this survey, which to me spells a massive problem for a lot of the communications that a lot of senior business leaders are doing. What do you guys think?
Well, I agree, and I think it's also an opportunity for us to try and fill that gap with some good content. But well, Archer was quoting the previous editorial director who said, "To be a thought leader, you first have to have a thought," which that may be where everyone's failing. You do have to have a thought, but then, yeah.
I suspect a lot of these senior executives do, but as we know, a lot of them get sort of caught up in what's the corporate speak and what's going to impress their bosses, rather than, like, they're all smart people. They didn't get to where they got to, most of them, you'd hope, on fluke and bravado. They got there by, intelligent output and successful strategies and so forth. So it must be there. Just how do you draw it out and get it out there authentically?
Yeah. Well, I think looking at the field, you have your top tier thought leaders who are actually leaders in their field, and they would be doing this kind of thing anyway. Like I was looking here in Singapore, Piyush Gupta, CEO of DBS. He is a knowledgeable person who has access and information about the world's economy. He's always being interviewed by, the major broadcasters and the major newspapers. He writes his own op-eds. So he's a natural thought leader that would be doing this anyway. And then you have people who are very specialized, who do have knowledge, and that's their business, and they kind of put out the same information over and over and over again to kind of catch those people who are looking for an answer to a question right away. And they're doing a very successful job. Then I think you have a bunch of people in the middle who are just there, just trying to keep their face, in front of people, and just trying to keep up, and not really knowing much about what they're trying to accomplish, but they know they don't want to miss out.
Yeah, sort of senior and middle management, but not the big bosses, and not the subject matter experts.
But also, I think that basically the reflection of any industry, it's the same in media, in entertainment, right? The actors, the screenwriters, there is always the top 1% in any industry. I think another aspect of this thought leadership also connects to our previous discussions in the last couple of weeks about consistency and also quantity versus quality. Because essentially, some benchmarks and some surveys state that you have to be posting very often, but of course the quality will then reduce, right? Because you can't just produce groundbreaking thought leadership pieces like every 2 hours the way they recommend you have to post it, right? So it kind of leads to this amount of kind of filler content that maybe is not as good as your hero pieces every week. But at the same time, if you just post once a week or once a month, it might still end up in the pile of garbage from the people's opinion point of view. So it's a bit of a kind of chicken and egg question, I guess. But at the same time, all these people, like even the DBS CEO, they didn't get there just by default, right? They were not born that. So it's all about consistency, though. It means that everyone started somewhere. They publish. At certain points, maybe some posts started getting viral. Then they're like, oh, actually, he's a thought leader. And now whatever he posts will, by default, on the topic of banking, will be getting more traction than any other bank has published. So
absolutely. I think this also refers to what we were talking about, I think it was last week, is the personal brand. And it's eclipsing the media brand. And so I think there is in some ways, if there's this missing piece for the middle who aren't getting the thought leadership right, and they're too worried about what their bosses might think or how it's going to feel in the corporate thing, they should probably flip that on its head and think about how powerful it would be for their careers if they build up a really solid brand.
And I was also trying to think to myself, when have I gotten any value out of thought leaders? When has thought leadership actually helped me? And it's really only been a few times where it's in response to a search. I have a question and I type in the question and I find someone who's a thought leadership or, a subject matter expert who answers that question for me, and then I move on. It's not like I sit there and follow that person forever and ever, but it's kind of that top of the funnel. They caught me. They had the right answer to my question at the time that I needed it.
Yeah, there's also, and to Arda's point, there's a lot of fake news out there amongst thought leaders. There's a lot of bogus thought leaders, basically.
Mm.
The second thing that we're talking about today is don't mention a pandemic. And by mentioning the pandemic, we have ruled out any opportunity we will ever have for promoting this particular video on Google or Facebook, at least for the next year or so until the.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
Okay.
Okay. Now that we've done it, yeah, let's talk.
COVID.
Coronavirus.
Pandemic.
Stop it. I still want the recommendation engine. So we've just written a blog because we found both for our clients and for ourselves, we did 9 campaigns for the content show, and all of them got knocked out because we've been publishing this during the pandemic, and you can't help mentioning the pandemic during the show. Google picks up on this, and they're like, "Nah, can't do it," and we were too lazy to cut it out of the show, so we just didn't do the campaigns. But with the client stuff, we had to then redo the creative quite a bit, and it was very subtle. Like, you can't mention social distancing. You can't go ... 1 meter ... in an animation because that's apparently and it's, you know what it is? It's to stop the charlatans out there selling vitamin C as a
cure,
a cure,
or
you know, God forbid, drinking disinfectant or something like that. Oh no, that actually happened and it was promoted. Yeah.
But also, actually, I'm curious whether this affects all the COVID-related videos that all the brands have been publishing, trying to get this positive spin on the news, like, we are there with you, we're together, the world will be the new normal, we are there for you. And now if everything, all the platforms basically banning all these videos that all the brands have been publishing, they will not be approved. So it's kind of like a lot of wasted investments.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2 classes, because you can ask for a review with Google, and if you're Unilever, you're going to get a very they're going to look very carefully at your ad. If you're Click to View and you've got a daily budget of $5, well, it's going to be a pretty quick decision to say no, rather than have to put it up the chain at Google and actually consider it thoughtfully. So I suspect that some of those COVID campaigns that have been done by the big brands got a much longer hearing from the from the arbiters.
Well, the one that we had to revise the animation was by big payments brands, so
that did have a bit bigger budget, and we got it through in the end.
Yeah. So again, like we're all equal, but some are a bit more equal.
It's always been thus, Arta.
Yeah. Welcome to life.
I think Orwell's a good thought leader for content marketing. He seems to come up in almost every episode.
Yeah. He was a. I just read his book on writing, and it's quite interesting because he goes through the reasons why people become writers, and he was quite on the money. And then he reveals. I thought it was going to be a book about writing, but no, it wasn't. It was about him and why his writing became so political, and how he sort of just everything he wrote after he decided he was going to be a political writer was designed to combat totalitarianism and I think it was promote democracy, something like that. But anyway,
some nonsense, right? Yeah.
Well, we need him back.
Well, speaking of Orwell, there was the one instance where finally one of Donald Trump's campaign ads was blocked by the Facebook algorithm. That was in a first, because they had been allowing all political ads, but because of a Nazi symbol, that was actually reviewed and blocked, which is kind of a first for the great Orwellian leader from the U.S.
It's wonderful, and his weird relationship with Mark Zuckerberg.
That's right, yeah.
Right, let's move on before we burn any more bridges. And look at our branded content picks of the week. So the first one is the FIFA Guardians, which is a mixed media animation, and a really, really nice one.
Yeah, very emotional message, and very smooth transition somewhere in the middle of the video from live action shots of kids playing and those guardian and coaches taking care of them into very minimalistically and tastefully done motion graphics. Definitely a very good style to aim for if you have maybe 4 or 5 key findings or key bullet points that you want to talk about. So it's a good treatment of text and visuals.
The next one is actually, there were some really good ones. I think this is my favorite though. Paste by WeTransfer had the best script in branded content so far this year, I think.
It was really good. I really love the style. They kind of have this sort of faux authority voiceover, and then the graphics are kind of retro influenced, and then they're promoting their new product, and they just did it in a really cool way. And you know, it reminded me that brands like WeTransfer, they are up against a lot right now, because I have gone through different file sharing apps as like WeTransfer, and a lot of it happens to do with the ecosystem, the environment that you're with. You know, like at one point, all my colleagues and all my clients were using WeTransfer. Then when I moved to a different company, everyone was using something else, and I like hadn't used WeTransfer in years. And I'm wondering, you know, it must be very difficult for them to keep reminding people that, hey, we've been out there, and you know, don't switch. You know, come back to us.
Yeah, there's I mean, it's weird how you sort of. There was a period when we used WeTransfer at Click2View. We don't really anymore, because Vimeo is a much better tool to transfer video files these days. But yeah, I don't know. It's like having a succession of girlfriends, isn't it?
And actually,
tell us more about that, Simon.
No.
Branded content picks of the week, right?
I was known as a serial monogamist. So.
Yeah, the animation, this version is actually the one that I picked, was the director's cut. So I was curious, and I went to the website just to see the differences between what the client decided to do and what the director chose it. And to be honest, the only difference was that the client, quite often, they want to see some text. So essentially, certain bullet points that the voiceover was reading, they were done in text, somewhere on the left, on the right, or maybe even in the frame itself. And then the director's cut basically doesn't have any text, because clearly the voiceover is enough. So it's nice to see the difference between how creatives view some stuff that is necessary and not necessary, and then the brand's perception of what has to be underlined.
Absolutely. So the one after that is Deloitte, and this is, again, it's a nice 2D animation with some sort of isometric elements.
Yeah. Again, like the showcase.
Do you like the way I said that? That was pretty cool, wasn't it? I like to sound like a graphic designer or a
creator. Exactly. It just proves that all the trends that we were reviewing, they actually worked. Now we can talk about all this mixed media. And yes, it's again, very nice, smooth transitions between isometric, then it goes to flat, then a couple of scenes are just kind of like lines. And I think the only recommendation is probably that this video could have been shorter, because I think it dragged for a bit too long, even if the topic is clearly something that is very relevant for Deloitte and their practice. And I quite like the end sequence of the use cases, where essentially the voiceover was not talking about them, was broadly talking about the kind of like the benefits and trends, but while the graphics themselves, the illustrations, were showing that there will be some virtual reality, there will be some robots helping with patients, like monorails, all this stuff.
Excellent. And then we've got TWG, the fantastic Singaporean brand. I'm pretty sure they're Singaporean, and a story about teas they get from Darjeeling. And Darjeeling's always fascinated me, although I've never been there, because when I was a young bloke, I was working as a porter in a hotel, and we used to get staying with us all the time was the Princess of Darjeeling, Mrs. Kapahi, and she used to go into the casino and play the keno, and at the porters, we also used to stand by the desk. We were like 17, this is the 80s, and we'd jostle around the one phone on the porter's desk, because after she walked up to her room, she would always call one of us to close the curtains in her suite, and we'd get $20 in 1987, $20 for one like 5-minute job. So it was always like a grab the hello.
Did you have the little bellhop hat when you were in that job?
Actually, I don't think I did. I had the full-on uniform, like the the red uniform, but we didn't have the sort of the bellhop hats. I think they were more of an American thing. I don't know.
Well, I'm
But
picturing
then-
a very Wes Anderson kind of situation.
Oh,
When
it was
Princess of
it was-
Darjeeling in a hotel, and
It was
Exactly.
beautiful Wes Anderson, and everything in this hotel was symmetric. It had a big grand staircase up the front, and it was like the what's that? The hotel Budapest.
Grand Budapest Hotel, yeah.
Yeah, Grand Budapest
Yeah.
Hotel.
And if only this princess was in this video, but unfortunately she was not. The video was about the area which she ruled, but it's a
digress.
it's a nice personal story. And I didn't know that Darjeeling is considered a champagne of teas, and they really present the story of origins and how unique is this place in Himalaya, that they have all these seasons affecting the taste, the flavor of the tea. And definitely after watching that, I'd like to try it.
well, the video is wonderful, and it's everything that I would hope TWG would be. You know, that's very much the image, and it's so idyllic. But it makes me wonder, can it really be that perfect? You know, because it just seems absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah,
I've never been to a tea field. I think I've driven through them in Java once, but
yeah.
they're very beautiful.
Although it did make me wonder, I'd like to know more about the workers' rights at the tea plantation.
Yeah, they were not smiling too much during the video, right?
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay, well, let's get on to the last one, which is from Advertise. And another one close to my heart: snow skiing. One of the things that I hope to do again, probably February next year.
You're welcome, Simon. You're welcome.
You're optimistic.
So this one, Michaela Skiffrin's very nice. Like it's obviously a lockdown type thing, but I wanted to hear more about the backstory, because there's some reference to her dad, and I didn't get the whole story out of the video.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe they didn't want to feature the actual, but they mentioned the accident. So basically, her dad died a couple of months ago after the accident, and that's why she took a break from skiing.
There's multiple layers to returning back to competition, because I haven't raced since my dad's accident.
Yeah, it's basically a personal story from the athlete who is going through personal life challenges, but she basically says that she wants to go back and she has no big expectations, but she just wants to make a couple of good turns because it will make her dad happy and proud. So again, like kind of finding strength and basically almost like learning to ski again.
Oh, well, I wish her all the best. On that note, thank you very much, guys. That's
Thank
another
you, Simon.
content show. Episode 16. Who would have thought we'd make it?
Oh, wow.
Not me.
Thanks for your confidence.
Yeah.
Right, bye, everyone. Thank you for watching.